Welcome to all of you joining us this morning for the NEA Big Read presentation, Pollinator Printmaking and the Incredible Fig Wasp. So glad you could join us this morning. My name is Jewel Ratzlaff and I am the Big Read coordinator for the Poughkeepsie Public Library District. If you don't have a brochure for this year's Big Read, I would encourage you to run to your local library and pick one up, or you can access it online at pokelib.org. This year's focus literature is Lab Girl by Hope Jahren. Hope you've had a chance to take a look at that as well. And just a few housekeeping things that I would ask you to please keep your microphones on mute so that minimizes the background noise. And if you have questions, Cara will take questions after the presentation. Feel free to put those into the chat box and we'll take a look at those after the presentation is finished. We are also recording this, and the recording will be available on the Poughkeepsie Public Library District website in a few days on the YouTube channel. So if you enjoyed it and want to invite a friend to watch the presentation, you'll be able to do that in a few days. So with that housekeeping bit taken care of, I think we'll just jump right in. Let me introduce Cara Hochhalter of Hyde Park, New York. Cara has had a varied career involving education, art, theology, and ministry. A love for nature and ecology has always been central to her work. The art of block printing has also been her medium for many years, in addition to watercolor. Cara studied art and theology at United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities and was ordained as a United Church of Christ minister in 2008. She served a church in Charlemont, Massachusetts for 10 years. She is now retired and with her husband, Jeff, lives in New York, in Hyde Park, New York, where she continues her art making. They have one daughter who lives in Brooklyn, who is a landscape architect with an ecological focus. So welcome, Cara.
Oh, thank you very much, Jewel. I want to thank you for organizing this wonderful Big Read series of programs, and thank you for inviting me to share. So I'm going to start by sharing how pollinators have come to be important in my artwork. I'm also going to talk about the place of pollinators in the larger ecological system. And I'll do a demonstration of making one of my block prints. And then I'll share my art and talk about the amazing fig wasp. That's the culmination of this program. You won't want to miss it. So I'm going to start by sharing some art. So let's see if we can make this work here. I don't know what you see while I'm doing this, but it'll just take a minute here. Okay. Okay, so when we, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. When we lived in northern Michigan for many years, I started doing watercolors, combining watercolor and graphite of wildflowers in the area. And this was along Lake Michigan in Charlevoix, Michigan, and the trillium are absolutely amazing and grow in great abundance there. Then we moved for a while for 2 years to Seattle, Washington, and I spent a year researching and painting and drawing some 16 endangered and sensitive flowers of Washington State. It's the only painting that I've actually made a poster of. So that was quite an experience. Then when we lived in Massachusetts, I did some of the garden flowers of the area, again, combining watercolor with graphite. Then I started, when I worked at a church as a Christian ed director, I started doing linoleum block prints when we lived in Michigan, interpreting some of the scripture stories. So this one is the parable of the sower, and I really enjoy the look of the light and the dark areas of a block print. And then since I retired from ministry, I decided to take 40 of my relief prints and make a book about the challenging piece in the life and stories of Jesus. So this is, again, where block prints have become so important. And now since my retirement, I'm really going back to some of the nature images with watercolor and relief prints. This is a little monarch printed over a print of a butterfly weed. And then I decided that the little pollinators need to go on some watercolors. So I've been experimenting with adding these block prints to watercolors. So we're going to be talking more about that in a minute. So we all know that climate change is real, and I am excited about the idea of nature-based solutions to encourage natural habitats in our own gardens and our own yards, because climate change seems so huge, and some of us feel a little inadequate to deal with it. But there are some wonderful suggestions of things we can do in our own neighborhoods and in our yards. And I know you all want birds in your yards. So if you want birds, you have to have caterpillars. Apparently it takes 4,000 caterpillars for a little chickadee to support the baby birds in its nest. 4,000 caterpillars. So if you want caterpillars in your yard, you also need to have plants. And if you want plants in your yard, then you need to have pollinators. So I think in this time of the pandemic, I've been able to sit in my yard and really observe so many little insects that I kind of took for granted for so many years. I want to quote E.O. Wilson, who said in 1987 that if insects were to disappear, humans would only last a few months. That's pretty incredible to me. So what is it about pollinators that make them so important? As we all learned in biology, it's really the sex life of the plant, because 90% of plants cannot self-pollinate. So the pollen needs to be moved from the female part of the plant to the male part of the plant, and the flowers can't get up and move around, obviously. So it takes an insect to get in there and move the pollen, as you all know, to fertilize it. Another thing about pollinators is that it traipsing around the different flowers is that it ensures genetic diversity. I never realized this before, but it makes the plant stronger so that if there's disease, then they can resist it. Kind of like we don't want humans to mate within their own family. It's better if they mate out of their family. So the same thing with flowers. We want the flowers to be pollinated by different plants. So, but not all pollinators do this job equally. And I want to recommend another book called Nature's Best Hope by Douglas Tallamy, who's written this wonderful book. And he says that not all insects are good pollinators. Some are just flower visitors, like some of the butterflies and flies and other insects that you see going to plants. But the very best pollinator is the bee. So I kind of cringe when people say, oh, I'm going to exterminate all these bees around, or wasps even, but they do make really good pollinators. Pollinator Network at Cornell says there are 416 different bee species in New York and 4,000 different bee species in the US. So I know you've all watched bumblebees going to your flowers and how they're so busy going from flower to flower, and they're made so that they can tuck right into each flower and really get the pollen and take it where it needs to go. So in order to ensure food for these important insects, we can help them by planting native plants because those are more readily adaptable to our regions, wherever you are. And I want to caution you, I've had some experiences going to nurseries to buy native plants, and there's a big sign that says native, but then I get home and it says it's native to Arizona or someplace, not where I live. So be sure that when you buy a native plant, it's native to wherever you live. And there are some lists of native plants that you can get, especially for your area, by going to National Wildlife Federation Native Plant Finder. And they give you a place to put your zip code in, so you can get a whole list of plants that are good for your region. And also there's a list by the Xerces Society. You can go online. I'm going to put these addresses up at the end. But the Xerces Society, if you go to the Northeast region or whatever region you live in the United States, you can get a list of all the native plants in your area. So now we'll get to the art part of this presentation. I have always really loved the look of block prints. Some of you maybe in high school made linoleum block prints where you carve out of a piece of linoleum. Or maybe when you were in elementary school, you might have made out of a potato print. This is a book of William Rice's woodblock prints. He uses a different a piece of wood for each color to apply the print. Those are so beautiful. Well, I don't use potato or linoleum or wood, but I order this kind of rubber, and I get it from Dick Blick or Blick Art Materials. You can actually go to any art supply store and find similar materials that make it really easy to carve. I usually get these big slabs, and then I cut them into smaller sizes so I can use them to make my prints. And there's usually a smooth side and a rough side, so you want to make your print on the smooth side. I'm going to share some of my small block prints for us. Just hold on for a second here. Here we go. Okay, this is a collection of my blocks that have already been carved of little pollinators, caterpillars, some pupas. We're going to go through each one. This one is a bumblebee. I like to use a really lovely Japanese rice paper to make the final print on. It just is, I love the texture of the paper and the way the print looks on it. This print is actually very small, like an inch by an inch. This is another a honeybee. The soldier beetle is also a pollinator. This is a metallic green bee. Of course, it's not colored here, but the green is just an iridescent bright green if you see it on a flower. And this is a solitary wasp. Wasps are really good pollinators too, so we need to take care of them. And this is the famous fig wasp that I'm going to be talking about later. This is a hummingbird moth. If you've seen these in your gardens, they look so incredible. They're actually only a little bit bigger than a bumblebee. And some of them are called clear wing hummingbird moths because they have little windows in their wing that you can see through. And they move very much like a hummingbird. This is a skipper. This is a checker spot. And a fritillary. Now I am actually more of an artist than a scientist, so if I don't have their scientific name, that's okay. And this is a swallowtail. And a monarch. There's one thing that I read actually in Dr. Talamay's book about the Monarch Caterpillar, that you know that they eat milkweed, and you know that a milkweed, if you were to break the stem or the leaf off, the milkweed is this white, has this white sticky substance in it. And apparently if an insect gets that white sticky substance in its mouth, it will glue it shut. So in the book, he tells how the monarch caterpillar so cleverly has figured out how to eat the milkweed leaves without having his mouth stuck shut. So if we have time at the end, I'll tell you how he does that. Okay. So another thing that I have learned that the pollen that pollinators collect is very precious to flowers. So flowers actually make it hard to get. So there are specialist pollinators who are especially made to get the pollen and take it to other flowers of the same species. And there are generalist pollinators who just kind of flit around and go to a lot of different flowers. They may get a little pollen on their wings and do a little pollinating, but the flower itself wants the very specialist pollinators to get in there so it can do the job more efficiently. So if you wonder why there are so many different shapes and colors and sizes of flowers, I guess this is it, that it's protecting that pollen and saving it for very specialized pollinators. So when you hear about the fig wasp, you'll hear about this amazing specialist pollinator. So how do I make the block prints? First of all, I make a pencil drawing. Now some people, you could just take the block and start carving right in and let your creative juices flow, and I'm sure it will be beautiful. But I do like to do a pencil sketch first, and I'm going to show a couple of these pencil drawings. Uh-oh. Okay, so these are the pencil drawings that I've done before I carved a lot of the blocks, bumblebees and some of the same ones that you saw. I've also done some pencil drawings of birds, caterpillars, wildflowers, and whoops, did you see any of those?
No.
There we are. Now we are.
Oh, now
Okay.
you are. I'm so sorry. Okay, there's the wildflowers, and there's some of the pollinators. So I do a pencil drawing first, and I'm going to do a demonstration today of a hummingbird. So I've already drawn my pencil drawing, and you can see there's a line around it. That is the shape of the block that I'm going to use. And this is sort of a trick that I take the pencil drawing that I've done with a number 2B pencil because it's soft enough, but you can also get a really sharp point on the end of it. And when I'm drawing the drawing, I'm thinking a lot about the lights and the darks and the lights and the darks, because that's what a block print is. So then I take the drawing and I'm going to put it upside down on top of a block. And then I take a spoon and actually print my pencil drawing on the block. So I will rub all over the drawing without moving the paper around. And I've done this ahead of time. So here's a pencil drawing that's printed on the block. This just really helps me to see kind of a guide of what I want to do. I try to get the proportions pretty accurate for the image, although my proportions, the scale when you compare like a bumblebee to the butterfly and on the flower, it's not so accurate, but I guess I have artistic license. So then I am going to start cutting, and I use speed ball blades, and you can get these in any supply store. I just used two different blades. One is very small, it has a little V shape on the end, and the other is a little bit bigger. They both have V shapes on the end. So when you carve a block, you kind of want to scoop in and out again. And I used the smallest one. I'm just going to do a little bit here. It's very easy to cut this material, but it's also very easy to cut parts that you don't want to cut. It's very easy to cut off a bird's bill or cut too much around the eye or whatever. But after you cut for a while, always thinking light, dark, because the light defines the dark and the dark defines the light. You can't have one without the other. It's really a beautiful kind of a yin-yang sort of thing. So after you cut for a while though, you can test it to see what it's going to look like and to see whether you want to cut more out. So I'm going to show you how I do that. This is a block I've already cut, the butterfly. Now I think I told Jewel that I'm going to feel a little bit like Julia Child. I hope I don't drop the chicken. Anyway, this is, you take a little ink. This is again Speedball ink, but I guess they do make other kinds of printing ink. It's a water-based ink. And then I just put a little bit on the top of a piece of plexiglass. This is plexiglass. And then you take a brayer, and these are a roller, it's a brayer. It comes with a kit, a printmaking kit, or you can buy them individually at art stores. But can you see my ink there? Then you're going to roll the ink. You roll it back and forth so it gets kind of a shiny look on the top of the ink. You're kind of just warming up the ink. And then, of course, you would normally do this flat on your table. But you take your block that you've cut already and you roll over the top, putting the ink evenly over the top. And then you take any old paper, computer paper. This is just your test. You just want to test it to see if you want to cut more. So you put your paper on top, and again you take your spoon without moving the paper. This is definitely harder to do when you're holding it up in the air. And then you carefully pull off the paper and you have your print. And then you look at it and you say, oh, there's way too much dark in this area, or there's not enough cut out. You can always cut more out, but you can't add more rubber to it. This is particularly true if you're doing people. So let's see, I'm going to share some more of these are called artist's proofs. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Oh, actually, these are watercolor cards that I have done. So what do I do with some of my block prints? I like to put the Japanese paper with the print on it on cards. These are some of the birds. But this is a proof. So there's the pencil drawing at the top left. And then, I can take my little pointer here. You see over this one, he looks like he's talking. And of course, in these days of COVID, we don't want so much coming out of his beak. So I wanted to cut some of that off, and I don't like all that over there. So in the second one, you can see I cleaned up around his bill and started cleaning up there. On this image, you see that I've cut some more away. And then the bottom one is the finished one. My sister said he looks like he's strutting. So then this was a little chipping sparrow. You can see his chest. I was trying to get this feathery texture in his chest, but I didn't like it. And so sometimes I have to leave it for a couple of days and then come back and look at it with fresh eyes. But I decided to cut more off of the chest, and I still didn't really like this part of it. So I kept cutting more, and then finally down here at the very bottom is the finished one that I really like a lot because it still shows some of that texture around his chest. And he's a pretty sweet little chipping sparrow. So, are you seeing these?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right, these are just some more artist proofs. The point is that you can print it and then you can blot it and get some of the ink off and go back in and cut more. So these are some of the cards with pollinators. Okay. Now, I decided that these little pollinators really need to go on flowers. So it happened kind of accidentally that I had a watercolor, and I thought, well, this watercolor needs a pollinator. And I also had some Elmer's glue. So I just experimented with attaching the little pollinator to the painting, and I really like it. So here is a black-eyed Susan. And this style of watercolor I call negative glazing because you're actually darkening around the image. It's kind of similar to cutting a block print. So you can see that the flower itself is pretty light and elusive. And then I took the little Pollinators block prints and I just put Elmer's glue underneath and then applied the block print and added Elmer's glue over the whole painting. This one is another one of Echinacea. This one has the metallic green bee and a little fritillary. There's a close-up of that one. This is Blazing Star with a little honeybee and a hummingbird moth and a checker spot. Again with a negative glazing. This is a great lobelia with a swallowtail and a fritillary and another honeybee. And these are some pictures from our garden. We just moved here not too long ago, so we don't have a huge garden, but it's amazing how even a small area of flowers can attract such wonderful, this little bee, look at the pollen on his legs. And the great swallowtail. These are little fritillary on black-eyed Susans. And a monarch. I haven't seen a lot of monarchs, but occasionally we get some. I'm trying to plant more milkweed. And that's a black swallowtail. So those are the flowers of our garden. So many different ecological interactions, and some of them are really talked about in the book Lab Girl. I love how she intersperses her own personal story as a woman scientist with these really fascinating little stories in nature, like how trees communicate through their root system and how they emit defensive chemicals to ward off harmful insects, and they can carry these warnings over a mile away. It's incredible to me. So now we're going to talk about the fig wasp here. Just hold on, I'll get that painting up. Please let me know if you can't see it. Can you see it?
Yes.
All right, so this is another watercolor of a close-up of a fig with the leaves. And then you have the little fig wasps here, the 3 of them. And it is so amazing because the flower of the fig is inside the fruit. So the flowers are inside, not like other trees where the flowers are outside, or plants. So how does the fig wasp get in there to fertilize the plant? And you know that the fig wasp is carrying, these are females, they're carrying pollen from other figs, and they need to get inside here. So if you notice the little spot at the end of the fig fruit, that's how they get in. It's called an ostiole. And so the little fig goes inside the fruit and finds the flower, and then deposits its pollen so that it can be fertilized. And then a few weeks, it also deposits eggs there. And then a few weeks later, the males emerge and mate with the female. And this all happens inside a fig. So the next time you eat a fig, you might have a new awareness. Anyway, they mate inside the fig. And then, but then the female needs to get out. And so the male very politely burrows a hole in the fig so that the female can get out and go to other plants. Now, unfortunately, I read that the male dies as soon as he's done burying that hole to the outside, but the female goes off to more figs to go inside and start the process all over again. So I don't know, I just thought that story is so incredible. And I realize there are many, many, many stories in nature. It seems like when you hear one of them, it just makes you have more questions about how nature works. So, oops, I turn that off. This one was actually the first painting where I decided to add pollinators, and I got kind of excited and went a little bit overboard, but it's certainly a joyful expression of this interaction of wildflowers and pollinators. So my last image is just my own contact information. If anybody's interested in any cards or of my artwork, there's my information. And I also have the website for the National Wildlife Foundation Native Plant Finder. If you want to put your zip code in, you can find plants that are really ideal for wherever you live. And also Xerxes.org has pollinator plants by region. And then Nature's Best Hope by Douglas Tallamy. And I think you all know the Lab Girl book by Hope Jahren. So now I'm ready for questions, or if anybody has stories of your own about pollinators, I would love to hear them. I guess, do you lead this?
Well, there is nothing in the chat box. We have no questions at this point. So I'll jump in and just remind folks that Douglas Tallamy is going to be coming to speak in November 7. He will be our closing event speaker. Now that's as long as everybody's healthy and, you know, COVID allows him to come from Pennsylvania to New York to speak. He will also be available, let's see, on, well, by Zoom. We'll Zoom the event as well. So keep that in mind.
Okay. So if anyone has any questions about the artwork or pollinators, or you have a story to share.
All right, so we have a question. Cara, I know you aren't a scientist, but an incredible artist. I have a very basic scientific question. What is pollen?
Oh, that's a really good question. Pollen is what enables fertilization to plants, but I don't know, does anybody else in our gathering here have a better explanation? I'm going to look that up. Nancy.
I'm not a scientist either. I'm an artist like you, Cara, but Pollen, I believe, is what the male part of the flower forms, and it sits there, little dust particles like, and when the insect comes into the plant and inadvertently picks that up, it drops it down to the female part. Or as you said, if it's traveling to another plant, it just rides along with the insect, those little male gifts, and are deposited to the stigma or the female part of the flower.
All right.
Anyone wants to dispute that?
Very
well,
good.
it just makes you realize that these things happen every day around us. And, you know, I just take it for granted so much. And so I have to say, because of the pandemic, I've really taken time to observe more closely and appreciate this amazing world that we live in. Any other questions or stories?
We have a comment. Someone went to an exhibit a couple years ago on Main Street, Poughkeepsie, that had art that was made by bees. The artist put the paper under or in hives, and the bees actually created the art.
Oh.
It was really beautiful.
I'll have to look that up.
Deborah says, thank you for sharing your beautiful work and the process, Cara. The images are lovely. A question, why don't you print the insects directly on the watercolor paper?
Oh, that's a really good question. And some other people have asked that too. Let me get, here's the original of one that I showed you.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, the paper, the watercolor paper that I like to do in order to do this negative glazing has kind of a rough texture. So you really can't print, I mean, you can try it, but it won't print very well to put the rice paper on top and print it. So that's why I just attach the print itself to the paper, and then putting Elmer's glue over the whole thing gives a really nice sheen. Can you see? It's kind of shiny.
Mm-hmm. And someone also asked, do you use any color other than black when you do your block printing?
Not usually. I really like the black and white, or whatever the color of your paper is, black and cream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
Cara, can I just quickly ask you about how you apply the Elmer's glue over your painting?
Yes, someone else is asking, do you thin it?
No. I just have a big jar of Elmer's glue, and I use this kind of spongy brush. And so then first I put, if I want to put another pollinator right here, for instance, I will get some Elmer's glue on this, and I just put it on that area. And then I take the little print and put it on there, press it down with this. You have to be careful that the ink doesn't smudge. But you press it down, and then after it's down there, I put more ink over the whole top. And then I add some color on top of that to the pollinator, since it is just black and white. I love these questions.
So that Elmer's that you held up was clear. I don't think I've ever seen clear Elmer's.
Right. It is clear glue.
Ah, all right.
And I don't know how many years it will hold, you know, not this color, but my father was an artist, art professor at Albion College in Michigan, and he often made collages with Elmer's glue. So if he can do it, I can do it.
Let's see. Time to tell us how the Monarch Caterpillar manages not to get its mouth stuck.
Oh yeah, this is a great story. So apparently the little caterpillar can start chewing on a milkweed leaf. And then when I don't know how he senses the milk is starting to flow towards his mouth, but somehow he does. And he takes a big bite out of the midrib of the leaf, and it makes the leaf fold in half. And so it stops the milk from flowing down towards the caterpillar. Isn't that amazing?
Oh my goodness.
You know, the wisdom that's out there that it's really lovely.
Huh. So Mary Claire says it's interesting that the insects are looking for food or something and inadvertently pollinate in the process. What a mystery.
Yeah, right. It's the nectar that they want to take back to their families or to eat themselves. The sweet nectar. Yeah, you're right. And then inadvertently, look what happens.
Would you tell us something about the prints that are behind you?
Okay. Yeah, yeah, let me. So I have framed some of my block prints. This is a cardinal flower. So it's, again, they're just printed on Japanese rice paper and framed. So there's several of my wildflowers there. The painting over here I actually did when I was in seminary. It's a watercolor interpreting Psalm 97. But it has a lot to do with the environment and endangered species. There are all different creatures in the painting.
Beautiful. Creates a lovely background.
Oh, thank you.
Let's see. Do we have any other questions? I don't see anything else. Cara, do you have cards for sale?
Yes, I do have cards for sale. So these are hand printed cards. I do sell them for $5 a card. So it's actually a little original print. And it comes with a matching envelope. And I'm happy to sell them and send them out to whoever would like one.
And you also, do you sell them at craft fairs or galleries or anything else?
Well, Arts around here, Arts Mid-Hudson has some of my cards. But I'm kind of just starting, since we've only lived here for 2 years, so I'm just starting into the art world in this area.
I believe it was through Mid-Hudson, Arts Mid-Hudson that I connected with you through your projects there. Yeah. Room Raider, Mary says, Room Raider would give you a good score.
What's Room Raider?
It must be a Zoom rating kind of thing. I'm not sure.
Oh, that's good. It didn't look too much like Julia Child.
No, it was great. They rate room backgrounds. There you go.
Okay.
Can I make a verbal comment?
Sure.
I don't know how you're typing your comments in there, so I'm using my iPhone to do Zoom. Anyway, I'm in Seattle. I got up at 7 a.m. this morning because of the time difference. Anyway, Cara, you did a great job. Also wanted to say I am exhibiting Cara's work, 12 of her prints that include birds and cats and other animals along with the flowers in the lobby of a condominium downtown Seattle tomorrow. I'm going to hang that show. So if anyone wants to email me, Cara can give you my email address, and I can send you images, or she can actually, the 12 images from that show. So yeah, I think there are people from all over. My name's Sue Hawes. It says iPhone on the identifying thing, but I'm Cara's sister. So thank you, Cara, and thank you, forgot your name.
Jewel.
Jewel, for setting this up. It's a treat to see Cara speaking.
Well,
and
thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you, Cara, for your presentation and also your knowledge and your beautiful sense of appreciation for these aspects of nature.
Oh, thank you, Lynn.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Cynthia says, thank you, Cara. I have purchased Cara's lovely garden flower note cards, can vouch for them. The cards are beautiful and printed on very high quality paper.
Oh, thank you, Cindy.
That's awesome.
Susan and Peter Purdy are here in at the town hall in Hollywood. Cara, a wonderful presentation, a huge treat, and we're looking forward to the next time we have a chance to visit with you and can see some of these wonderful works in person again.
Thank you, Susan.
Lori would like to see your email address again. Can you share your screen again, Cara, with that final slide, please?
Sure. Let's see here.
Great combination of science and art, says
Yeah.
another individual. All right, there we go. There's the contact information as well as those great resources. And I think we will wrap it up with that slide. I thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And I thank you, Cara, for this marvelous presentation. Keep your eye on www.pokelib.org for more lectures, and you can go back and revisit this presentation on the YouTube channel. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Yay, thank you.